Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story installment. And this next one is on the pages of Omni. So, interestingly, the title of it all is on the edge, Latter-day Martian Chronicles. Now, there's all these different things here. Let's see, but look what matters as far as the story. Alright, this is how it's described in the table of contents. As you can see, it's not just Isaac Asimov. It's actually got a little round robin, as it were, of 5 different authors. Let's just read them off. Read off what we got here, a little blurb. Suppose Mars is already colonized. What kind of experiences would its inhabitants now be going through? 5 science fiction writers, Isaac Asimov, Pat Murphy, Bruce Sterling, Gregory Benford, there's a name that comes up again later on in Asimov's legacy, and Joan D. Vinge share their visions. Page 50. So, go to page 50. And we find here, alright, Latter-day Martian Chronicles. And in fact, the first story, although it doesn't say, is Asimov's. There's also this art piece here. Drawn somebody there on the planet. And it says paintings by Greg Manches. Okay. There's a blurb here for this whole package of stories, or maybe for Asimov's. Working, Living, and Loving. Authors Isaac Asimov, Pat Murphy, Bruce Sterling, Joan D. Vinge, and Gregory Benford. Notice the reversal of the order of the last 2 names. Show us a day in the lives of the Red Planet pioneers. And that indeed it has. This one clearly belongs to the one that Asimov has written. This is like a canyon. It's so deep it's almost dark in there. In fact, the story is about life in a canyon on Mars. And the idea is that it's in lower altitude. And you know how on Earth, when you have a lower altitude, it's actually a hotter place. It's some of the hottest places on the face of the Earth, not counting those, the insides of the Earth or those places at the bottom of the ocean where stuff comes out, that's hundreds and hundreds of degrees, but on the ordinary land surface of the Earth, some of the hottest places would be like Death Valley, which is quite a ways below sea level. So maybe if you had a very low elevation somewhere on Mars, even if it was just inside a canyon, and you got canyons on Mars, maybe that could be a warmer, better place. The atmosphere would probably be a little bit thicker, though being carbon dioxide, it still is usable. It's just, it gives you a little bit more, probably also gives you more dust, and even that point gets mentioned here. So let's start with a little introduction to the whole section, because this is what this is about here. Consider the following scenario. The Vice President of the United States chairs a group to plan the country's space future. It reports on 3 possible long-range programs. The first is a mission to Mars that will put men on the Red Planet in 2 decades. The second proposes orbiting lunar and space stations and a shuttle. And the third keeps costs down by suggesting just the space station and the shuttle. Sounds pretty much like today's news, today being 1990, July 1990 was when this magazine came out. The VP in question was Spiro T., nattering nabobs of negativism, Agnew, at the Space Tech group he headed, made his report in September 1969. So 1990 is not exactly recent news. Had we followed its most ambitious advice, American astronauts would now be dwelling on a distant planet. While the flagging courage of our pundits and politicals thwarted such a grand vision, Omni has decided to draw a picture of what life would have been like for the Martian colonists had such a commitment been made. Think of it as an alternative reality, what might have been had we spent an extra $10 billion a year on the space program over the last 2 decades. Had we made this investment Mankind would have settled Mars in 1984, Years 1, Tempest Mars. To report back to Earth about life on our planetary neighbor, we have enlisted the aid of writers Isaac Asimov, Pat Murphy, Bruce Sterling, Joan Binge, and Gregory Benford. From their vantage points, they depict a place where the living is exciting, the going hard, and the potential unlimited. And the person who's gathered this is somebody Tom Dweritsky. So, there are other pieces of artwork associated with the other stories. I mean, obviously this one involves a robot. Asimov's section doesn't mention that sort of thing. And so, this one I guess involves some kind of a shoreline. Asimov doesn't mention that. And this one has some sort of craft in orbit over Mars. And that's it for that. So, very lovely paintings. So, Asimov's story specifically. It starts off with simply, Dear Mabel, well, here we are as promised. They've given us a permit to live in the Valles Marineris. And don't think we haven't been waiting for a year and a half, because we have. They're so slow, and they keep talking about the capital investment required to make the place livable. Valles Marineris sounds as good as an address, but we just call it the Canyon. By the way, this story, such as it is, it's probably a little bit closer to like the New Frontier, more of a description of the place than much of an actual story, was collected into gold. However, reflected in there is the title of In the Canyon, page 69. So I guess there is In the Canyon. And then she starts with Dear Mabel and so on. And there's no other blurbs or any artwork associated with it as collected here. But at least you can read the text of it. So I won't spoil what little there is to spoil. There's not too much. They're talking about some of the things that are going on, could be going on. Yes, it's a deep valley, but there hopefully will be a way in and out of it. The lower gravity makes it a lot easier than it might otherwise have been. There's talk of maybe pulling a great big cover over the whole valley, so that you could actually contain an atmosphere in there, which would be kind of nice. And so some discussion on that. And finally, it ends with a mention of the promise of what's on Mars. Some of the details are kind of fun and interesting. We can kind of try to imagine it. Kind of makes me think of a different collection. I don't have it with me, but there was all these essays by Arthur C. Clarke on a book called Report on Planet 3. And I remember some of those things described, well, the space station would be like this. It would be the hotel in space, and what life would be like there, and where you could go from there. And it was kind of a neat thing, and it made you almost feel like a travel log that, just like, oh yeah, you can go to Paris, see the Eiffel Tower, and eat at these 3-star restaurants, and You see the Louvre Museum where they have the what is that? Mona Lisa and so many other incredibly famous and significant pieces of art and so on. And there's all these great things to see in Paris. The difference is if you can get yourself some time and money to travel, you can actually see Paris. Like the girl saying, "Oh, I want to see Paris before I die." Because it's a bucket list kind of a thing. So, but obviously seeing a space station or seeing life on Mars, especially in a place that's described there as kind of the Martian Riviera. Oh yeah, like in Monaco where the weather's better than California and really nice. And you're right there on the beach and there's lots of money and fancy buildings, and you'd better be pretty darn rich if you want to try to live there, which usually means you're either royalty or casino owner, or both. Anyway, not a whole lot to the story itself per se. But like I said, it goes under the title Latter-day Martian Chronicles in the magazine, which actually applies to not only Asimov segment to all, but to all five. Sort of like the original Martian Day Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, which are more real stories, I'd say, on Mars. They say, or the individual one that's Asimov's segment and has been individually named when collected in the book In the Canyon. So, that's that story, and thanks for listening on what there is on that.